So I think the big aha moment for me, and actually this was covered by the class, was time orientation.
Uh-huh.
So there's one of the aspects that different cultures have is how they interact with time.
Yeah.
And some cultures are there are different extremes of the spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of where we land on that. And some cultures are very time oriented,
Yeah.
where everything is driven by the clock.
Yes. Yeah.
Others are more relational and less time oriented. So some cultures, the relationship is more important than the clock or the time. And I think one thing that's important to understand about culture, and something I learned very early on, is that differences are not deficiencies. What I mean by that is being different is not a good or bad thing.
That's true.
It's just different.
Yeah. Welcome back to Rooted and Routed, the podcast about expat life. I'm your host, Sabia Pathan. I'm back with another guest. He's an expat living in India since 2 years, almost 2 years. He's passionate about learning culture and history, and he has done that for India very well. He, in my eyes, has been the best expat who has integrated into Indian culture much more than anybody else that I've seen around. He is passionate about outdoor activities as well, besides learning the history and culture of India. He is also a passionate person who believes in giving back to the less privileged. Let me welcome Josh Boyles. Hi, Josh.
Yes, Amelia. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I may not cover everything about you, but I think let me ask you with the first question. How did you find the motivation to learn the history of India? Because I understood that you are a lot into reading books.
Mhm.
And with that, you have gone through a couple of resources online to learn Indian history. That is something not easy to do because Indian history is quite rich. And I don't know what all you have learned. Let's hear about that from you.
Sure. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I very much respect what you've done with your podcast, and I appreciate the opportunity just to come on and just contribute what I can to the work that you're doing. I think that India for me, of course, as you mentioned, is a recent experience, right? I've been here as an expat for less than 2 years, but I would say that the story really begins much earlier than that. And even from the beginning, as a child, I grew up in an environment living near a university where there were lots of international people. We were living in an apartment building, and I could recall walking down the hall and just smelling the cooking of different countries and cultures, right? So we had a large number of international graduate students who were living nearby and integrated with. So really, as a child, I grew a respect and then some understanding of different cultures and different aspects of that. But that really continued through my life. And even though India is actually my first expat assignment, my first time fully living abroad.
Yeah.
But prior to that, even when I was in high school, I spent 3 months living in France. And I was a student and I was studying French, and we were there on an educational program where we're not allowed to speak English, and we were integrated and living with living with local families. So for me, that's really the starting point for kind of this curiosity of cultural understanding and trying to really understand why people are different yet similar.
Different and similar. That's my point.
Yeah. So I think that I found that, really, I mean, through that experience and then subsequent experiences, I really found that we're all the same in a lot of different ways. But at the same time, there are some distinct differences, and it's good it's helpful to understand those differences and really explore them so that we can connect with people more clearly.
Mhm.
So as a So, once I graduated from high school, I went to university, and because of the time I'd spent living abroad and studying French, I actually was able to get a degree in French in addition to my computer science degree. So, of course, my passion from a work standpoint was computer science,
Yeah.
but since I had this unique learning opportunity, I was able to also get a degree in French. And there, I studied French culture and French language.
Oh, you do. So are you a fluent?
So yes, I'm also a fluent French speaker. Right. Yeah. So and actually with our youngest child, I ever since he was born, I speak only in French with him,
Okay.
so that he can, and also our other children can learn a little bit of language and gain some of that experience. But coming back to India, I think while I was in university, I also took classes in ethnography, which is kind of the study of cultures and people.
Yeah.
I took a class in linguistics, which is really understanding how the languages are formed and
Okay.
how people use language. And those also helped me to kind of have a context that
Yeah.
really enabled me to hit the ground running in India. So fast forward into my career, I had graduated with a degree in French, but I never expected to use it. But it was just a benefit that I had.
Yeah.
And I ended up moving to a job in the middle of the United States, the center of the United States, where we're probably as far removed from another country as you can get inside the United States.
Which part was that?
This was the Midwest, just kind of the Western Midwest.
Okay.
But for my global reference, I would say it's west of Chicago.
Okay.
And so living there and working there, I never really thought that there would be an opportunity, but I was always open to living in a different country at some point because of my experience that I had in France. I was really willing to explore different cultures and gain that understanding at a deeper level.
Yeah.
So that those opportunities didn't really arise early in my career.
Okay.
But I think one thing I've learned though is that every experience that we have is formational, meaning that all the things that we experience and the life that we live helps to form who we become in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was being all this time. I was even when I was a child, but then as full time working as an engineer, I was being formed and informed by my experiences.
Yeah.
And that included opportunities to host international students. We would have exchange students come, and they needed a host family to
Okay.
kind of help them with cultural understanding
Yeah.
and gaining exposure. So multiple times over the years, my wife and I would host an international student.
So you were kind of helping the students integrate in the American culture.
Correct.
Oh my, all right. That's the first stepping stone for you to kind of, okay, maybe living abroad can be a good choice for not just you, but for the family. The family was doing.
That's right. Yeah. And it was great for our children to also have that experience and meet people from different cultures and have different experiences. So that was, I would say, as you said, it's a stepping stone in this direction. And then from a work perspective, we would have international colleagues come to visit and also on assignments in the US. And so we would bring people, and I would host multiple times. I hosted a French colleague who was coming to the US and was living and trying to help him understand our culture. And then multiple Indian colleagues. So I was leading a team that was we were building a team in India. And I brought multiple colleagues over to the United States for them to learn our company culture and also the overall context that we work in, the business environment and those types of things. And then we would send them back with that experience, and then they would lead a team in India. So really that's for me then, the launching point of India connection, right? Is working with Indian colleagues on a regular basis, hosting them in the United States. And then I was making trips to India as well to then build the team and develop the team and the organization. That really happened over the series of 12 years, where I've actually been visiting India before we moved here for about 12 years.
12 years, okay.
With multiple visits.
That helps, I think so, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That really gives you the glimpse of India on and off. I think, did you also visit some other cities in India during this 12 years?
During that, it was mostly in Pune,
Okay.
actually, but I did spend some time also in Bangalore.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was a good opportunity for you, and not many have that. There's many expats, they come here for a pre-visit, which is just a 1 week, and in 1 week they really have to see the city get a glimpse of the whole lifestyle, probably meet one or two expat families around. On those moments, do you face any challenges when you're interacting with Indian colleagues or students back in the US? Or were there some challenges trying to understand the culture? Okay, I want to know more about this section now that you know more about this tradition, but trying to understand like why do they do this, or like the holidays we have in India. Did you have the curiosity to look into that as to why this festival, let's say Diwali, celebrated, and was there something that was challenging for you to accept? I mean, you don't have to accept the traditional reasoning, but just to understand.
Yeah, I think it's extremely valuable to try to understand, right?
Yeah.
To seek to understand the context and the environment that people are in. As I know that we all come from a context, we all come from some framework or worldview that shapes how we interpret situations and how we work with others. So I was very curious, of course, coming to India to understand more about the culture, more about the festivals, exactly what leads to these things, why are these being celebrated, and all of these things. I think one resource that was extremely valuable for me was I picked up a book on one trip at one point. I picked up a book called The Indian Epics Retold.
Okay.
So it's a modern language interpretation or version of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
Nice.
And also some of the other things, gods and demons that are associated with the culture. And to understand, of course, the prevailing culture, the largest culture in India is Hindu culture. Yeah. So having that context of Hindu culture helped me to understand a lot, also the festivals, the celebrations, and where they come from, what their context is, but also also provided some cultural context that really helps also when you're having a conversation. And one thing I found is that people are really helped by analogies. Yeah. Right? If we can make a connection of an idea or a concept to some context that they're already aware of or that they're already part of, then that enables them to understand it more deeply.
That's true.
And so understanding that context, understanding the history, understanding the stories that lead through that history, that also really helped me to have that context and be able to connect with people. At the same time, as you noted, there are, of course, going to be cultural challenges, right? I think that one thing that was very important before coming to India is something at class I took many years ago, which was called Working with India.
Okay.
And it was a combination of, first of all, understanding cross-cultural aspects, right? So how different cultures look at different things, how they associate topics, but then also specifically for India, like what are some of the specific contexts, what are the specific things to be aware of for India. Yeah. That was extremely valuable and extremely helpful, but at the same time, it can't cover everything, right? So it's only when you
are in the situation that you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Only when you're there and actually experiencing it do you then have an aha moment, or, oh, I understand now maybe what this class was trying to teach me, or maybe it wasn't even something covered in the class.
Yeah, it's like, was that only covered for work culture, or was that just like, okay, everyday life and work life? Was that what you learned?
It was primarily focused on work, but it did also talk about sort of the cultural context of work. So it had some of the broader culture, but of course it didn't get into the details of how do you do grocery shopping, or how do you navigate traffic, or those kind of things.
Yeah, okay. That didn't cover that part.
It did not.
So that was your aha moment, I would say.
So I think the big aha moment for me, and actually this was covered by the class, was time orientation. Uh-huh. So there's one of the aspects that different cultures have is how they interact with time. Yeah. And some cultures are very under different extremes of the spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of where we land on that. And some cultures are very time oriented, where everything is driven by the clock. Yes. Yeah. Right. So if the clock says I need to be somewhere, then I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing and I'm going to move on to that other thing. Right. And then I'm going to jump into that because that's what's driving my behavior. Yeah. Others are more relational and less time oriented. So some cultures, the relationship is more important than the clock or the time. That's true. And so if a meeting or a conversation is taking longer than expected, that's fine, and we just adjust accordingly, right? So this I understand conceptually, and I saw it in simple behaviors. It was easy to tell, well, people would arrive late to a meeting, or I would consider late to a meeting because they were finishing another conversation or
Right.
something like this. So these things I could understand and I could make an adjustment. But what, for me, the culture shock or the surprise
Yeah.
was how that extended to, I'll take an example of schooling with our children.
Right. Yeah.
So, we're used to the school publishing a school calendar at the beginning of the school year,
Right.
where they will say, these are the days that we have school, these are the days that are, off school for holidays or for celebrations or teacher days or whatever. So we can plan our school year calendar around this and understand when the children will be in school and when they won't be. And that's generally true, but it's not completely true in India. So what could happen, I'll give an example, is let's say that there's some political unrest or there's a
Yes.
protest march happening that's maybe scheduled a couple of days in advance. Then we get notification from the school, maybe the day before, or that no school tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this for me was a surprise, right? And that's one example. At school we can manage this, but I think those permeate the society, and that's something that only by experiencing it can you really
Yes.
understand and get used to.
And that is not really mentioned in any of the books.
That's right. And I always try to also look at the other side of that to say, okay, this is, and I think one thing that's important to understand about culture and something I learned very early on is that differences are not deficiencies. What I mean by that is being different is not a good or bad thing.
That's true.
It's just different. And so thinking about this time orientation, one benefit or one strength that I see in my team and work is that they are very adaptable. They can respond to change. They can make an adjustment if a surprise happens or if there's some unexpected event or issue. Then people respond. They adapt. They respond. They resolve the issue.
It's a good way of you're putting what the time orientation, right? I mean, everybody spoke about IST, like Indian Standard Time, and that is really taken in a very different way. But you know what I realized when the more I have as well explored, there are cities like even the Latin countries there as well. The time is quite similar to what we follow. The culture part, the same thing is what I noticed in Italy. So yes, but when it comes to time, I think there are many other countries who also have a similar time orientation, a relationship with the time. The first year, was it difficult for you? The whole year, or did you take a bit of, let's say, 3 months to adapt, and then you felt like, okay, I'm settled now?
Yeah, I think I definitely had. I would say I definitely had some personal advantage in the number of times I'd come to India and how long I've been working with colleagues and visiting. So for me, I would say that adapting to the environment of Pune and of India really didn't take much time at all. And so I have, I would say I can explain that by recognizing that that I had that advantage.
Yeah.
At the same time, I would say our family, my wife and our children, they also pretty quickly adapted. And I think I'm extremely happy that they were able to adapt. We're all able to adapt pretty quickly and kind of get used to the culture. At the same time, these things like the shocks were not ones that we experienced maybe right away, but actually came later. So even when we had, I would say, adapted pretty quickly and were able to function very effectively in a short amount of time, it's those surprises. You never know when they're going to come. Yes. And there's, there could be some that could come in the future, right? During our time here. So I think that's something we should always be recognizing that there's not necessarily, I would say, a specific amount of time that's once you're over that threshold, then everything is
also true, yeah,
to be expected.
It's like, it's chaotic, but it's organized chaos.
Yes.
And that happens on and on. I know a few expats or people who are living here, even if it's been 5 years, it still feels like, this is too much. Right? There's some moments that you feel like, okay, I need a bit of a streamlined process because once you have experienced, let's say, a situation in hospital, that was chaos. Once you have experienced a situation, let's say, with holidays or some festivals and all, and it keeps coming back in different form, different scope, I would say. But yeah, it keeps on surprising you.
Right.
And I don't think so that means that you are 100% settled and now, in and out about Indian life in India. Um, but yeah, well, with this whole process of integrating, one thing that I noticed is not just with you, but with your family, you are a lot into exploring the city.
Mm.
I remember when you guys moved in, and we were heading for summer holidays. And that was the time when India was known for its monsoon period. And in that weather condition, you continue to explore the city like nobody else. And when I came back from summer holidays and I asked your wife, what else did you do back in the city? And you said, okay, you did this, and everything outdoor. Museums that you guys visited as a family, outdoor activities that you did. I know that you are a certified ski instructor from the past, right?
Correct.
Um, so the outdoor activity, the passion for outdoor things is something that has passed on to the kids quite well. So when you came to India, these 12 years, it was all about work.
Right.
And did you get a chance to explore the outdoor activities then? Or was it like, okay, once you came in with the family and as a family, you started to explore? But I know that you're also certified rock climber. So how did you really find the places in Pune or around Pune for rock climbing? Did you contact some organization who are into that? Or did you self-explore the whole thing? Talk us about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think I did have an advantage with the visits for work in the past because I would be very intentional about having a weekend where I would stay for roughly 2 weeks, but I would have a weekend in the middle then that I could have an opportunity to explore or to learn more about, get outside of work, learn more about the culture, learn more about the natural world around. So one of the common activities that my colleagues would encourage would be trekking. So going to a local hill station or a fort and doing some trekking, hiking up from the bottom. They knew that I was outdoors enthusiast, so it was an easy decision. I think a lot of people in my office also were interested in the outdoors enough, at least from a trekking perspective. So they would take me on treks, and I would go and we would explore different forts and learn about different, I'd experience different outdoors areas around Maharashtra. And so that really piqued my curiosity because as a rock climber, I'm sort of also always looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
So even with other travels, I would say, okay, where am I going, and can I do some research to find some rock climbing in that area? So I've actually done rock climbing in different countries around the world.
Yeah, I was about to ask which all the countries have you been to, because the Indian landscape is quite different.
Yes.
So I'm sure like wherever you've been to different terrain, the experience then changes there.
Right.
Or was it difficult in India?
So India was actually, for me, Pune itself was for me a nice fit from an outdoor perspective. Of course, the skiing is not there,
right.
but from trekking, rock climbing, outdoors, that it was fantastic. And so I was actually able to find, through some research and on my own, I was able to find that one of the places that was common to go trekking actually has an opportunity for rock climbing. It has routes set up, and some people have been using it for training and for rock climbing classes and things like that.
Okay.
This is Sinhgad Fort, near Pune. And once I discovered this, I brought all my rock climbing gear with me on a trip, and I said to my team, okay, we're going to go rock climbing. Normally we go trekking. We're gonna go trek up to this location, and we're gonna find where the rock climbing is. I had a rough idea, but I didn't know exactly. So I convinced some of my colleagues to go with me, and we went exploring. And from that, by the way, it took some convincing because though my colleagues were, and I think this is also good to recognize with Pune and probably all of India, is that even though after the fact I learned that there is a rock climbing community in Pune, there are a few rock climbing gyms actually in the city.
Gyms, did you say that?
Yeah, like locations where they have artificial rock climbing locations in Pune. But this was all something I found well after the fact.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't know, I didn't find any resources that said there's rock climbing. But I did find one website that said people rock climb at Sinhgad. So my colleagues were hard to convince. They told me, no, people whatever resource you're seeing isn't correct. People do not go rock climbing there.
I know, that's why for me the topic is quite interesting because I've not seen. I know you asked me that. Okay, we can go and rock climb one of the places. What was that place? Not Fort.
Yeah.
Fort that you also climbed, right?
Yes. Sinhgad Fort is.
There's one more.
Um,
Was it? Varda?
I'm not sure.
In the old city, you said like you also climbed there, or was it just the fort?
We just visited the fort there, Shaniwarwada. We did
Yeah.
visit,
Okay.
yeah, but we didn't climb there. But there's nearby Shaniwarwada, there is a rock climbing gym. Yeah, so you can do that's. I think that's what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah, probably yes.
Yeah, near Shaniwarwada, there's an outdoor artificial rock climbing wall,
Yeah.
and that's always available, and people go and climb.
Is it good quality and
It is. It is actually, and what we discovered later is that there's a coach there who coaches for part of the Indian Olympic team. So they actually have a competition wall for competitive rock climbing.
So the level must be quite high then of people who come for practicing training.
Correct. Yeah. So they have a mix. They have one easier wall, but then they have the much more challenging competition walls as well.
Wow. And this is something that you do often with your colleagues or also family?
So my family, everyone in my family also enjoys rock climbing. My two oldest children were heavily involved in rock climbing at our local gym in the United States. And even our youngest learned to rock climb when he was very small. So he enjoys it quite a bit. So all of us, my wife, my children, we all enjoy going and rock climbing. And so we've had some opportunities to do it in the city here. We've also had opportunities to do rock climbing out, when a trekking location outside the city as well.
I have kind of experienced myself the rock climbing with you in Thailand. I remember with the entire family, the way your little one, the youngest one, right? Did you train them in when they were really young, or was it recently that they were certified? And how does one get into the process of getting certification?
So it was a mix. From ages, it was a mix. I think for us, the advantage was where we were living in the United States, we had a really vibrant climbing gym community. So it was close to our home, and our children really enjoyed spending time there and climbing there. So we became members of that climbing gym, and we started learning and getting certification so that we could do all of the activities. So I think it really kind of happened when, as I said, several years back, and then we got more heavily engaged in it.
But is it easy for the kids to get certified? And what is the minimum age to get the certification?
The minimum age for certification is 13. So that so our oldest was certified before we moved, and our other two are not yet certified, but they can do all the activities. They just haven't gotten the certification because they weren't old enough.
Okay. And is there something like a number of hours that you have to finish
There-
to get the certification? I'm just curious because I think a lot of people think that, okay, trekking is nice, but I think in the same terrain, the same spot where you go for trekking, you can also go for rock climbing. Am I right?
Correct.
There's something not much of difference between the place for trekking and rock climbing.
That's right.
The only difference is that they are trained. Rock climbing is really properly trained. Trekking is probably you don't need a training, right? One can just go with the proper, of course, shoes.
Right.
But for rock climbing, it's different.
Yeah, for rock climbing, I think anyone can also do rock climbing if they're with someone who has the proper training and has the proper experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's for our children. I would say our oldest, he has had the proper training, and he could do everything that essentially that I can do. But our younger children, they can climb with us. They have the experience, but they wouldn't be able to set up the rock climbing location with ropes and everything.
And that is not something a certification probably done in India, or do you know anything about in India if they do it?
They do. There are classes through a couple of local. There are a few local avenues for getting rock climbing training as well as certification. So depending on the level, right, that goes from the simplest level of getting training to be able to do understand how to do the rock climbing and be there with a guide,
Yeah.
all the way through the guide training. So there are places locally that are mountaineering institutes,
Right.
where people learn, of course, to do mountaineering, like you would need to do if you're going to Nepal or to the Himalayas.
Yeah.
And you can also learn the rock climbing skills and techniques from them as well.
And does the age differ for the certification?
I'm not sure what the age requirements are.
This outdoor activities that you come up with your colleagues, do you think that this is very crucial for work environment, for work-life balance? I feel every employee, everybody should have some passion outside work. And was it easy for you to form a group, bring the team and say, okay, let's just go? Did you see some kind of a impact of more going outdoors as a team in the productivity and work environment? Do you notice that?
Yeah, I definitely noticed the impact is there. And so when the opportunity can happen and we can create that opportunity for people to get out of the office and interact in a way that's different from the normal workplace interaction, it pays dividends. I mean, it gives benefits beyond the time spent in that activity. I would say it was relatively easy early on when I was still, I would say, a guest. Culturally, my Indian colleagues are very hospitable, and so they'll go out of their way to take time to welcome me as a guest. And so when I first arrived and when I would visit before I moved here, we would very often have opportunities to get together outside of the office because they knew that I was only here for a short amount of time. They wanted to invest that time while I was here. And so we would go at activities, we'd go trekking together, we'd spend time together. Even went down to watch the Ganesh festival, so watch the procession, as a team. And so those opportunities are great when they can be had. I think it is always a challenge. There's a tension that between work and life balance that, in some ways it's still work associated. So people have to, there's some obligation if I ask people to take time outside of work.
Okay.
But at the same time, there are people that are very passionate about, trekking or going out. And so they look for opportunities and then we create those chances when we can.
And was it easy for them to kind of completely forget and look at you as not, let's say, their boss, let's say, or colleague, but just somebody who's, is well aware of rock climbing and let's just take his guidance and learn something about rock climbing? Or was it hard for them to, you don't look at me as as your colleague or let's say your boss, just look at me, let me help you in guiding you on.
I think it actually was a nice situation to be in where I've taken colleagues, they've taken me trekking and then I've taken them rock climbing.
Oh, nice.
So they get an opportunity to host me, which anyway, they feel like that's straightforward and easy to do. But then I get to turn that around a little bit and play the host and be the one helping them to learn and get a new experience and get a new exposure. And I think that's actually been quite healthy that they're able to, as you asked, they have been able to switch to a different frame of reference and look at things differently.
I think it's quite important to have a work-life balance and people look at what is work-life balance. Is it more to do with get into fitness or have a membership? Some companies have a gym membership or have space for working out in the office itself. Not everybody is too keen on doing the workouts in the gym. They look for outdoor opportunities, but then I think sometimes, I'm not too sure if India really lacks that. India doesn't lack it, but probably we don't really have enough information of what exactly can we do outdoors. And if it is really safe to do it.
Yeah, one thing, and kind of connecting that to that, is one of the things I thought was really great coming here is that even though initially I didn't realize that there was rock climbing, that people were doing rock climbing here, but I was able to pull people into that and get it started. But then once we started doing it, and I run into people, while we were climbing, and I found out that there is a community here in Pune that does rock climbing and is involved. And I got an opportunity to meet this coach, who's one of the coaches for the Indian team. And what I learned, I think, is even if And I would encourage expats to look for these kind of things to say, if you've got a passion,
Yeah.
if there's something that you are interested in or that you enjoy doing out, before you move to India, look for that, see whether it's there or not. It may not seem like it's there initially, but if you might end up finding like I did, that
Yeah.
it actually is there. And there's even like a vibrant community of people doing it.
Really?
And so that creates a whole nother connection, right? A new
Yeah.
opportunity to both explore something you're passionate about, as well as get incorporated into life in India.
Yeah, connecting with the local culture, isn't it? Because that's how you want to represent yourself during your stay in India, to bridge the gap between the expat and the local. And first thing is to really bring both of them together in an activity which you love, they love, and there's a exchange of experiences, interactions, and yeah, that's how you connect with people and you have a connection.